why we do so many things every day, yet rarely pause to think about how we actually think. We cook breakfast, drive to work, make dozens of little decisions, yet how often do we ask, how did I decide that? What's really guiding my thoughts? That's the starting point of a journey called critical thinking. It's not about being skeptical or judging everything. It's about learning to observe your own thoughts, to face your beliefs, habits, and even hidden biases. Because if you don't understand how you think, how can you be sure your decisions are truly right? In this video, I'll take you through an exciting journey, how the brain works, the mental traps we often fall into, and the practical skills you need to become a stronger critical thinker. Think about this. If you knew how to analyze information instead of blindly trusting emotions, if you could ask yourself, could I be wrong? How different would life be? You might avoid rushed decisions, false beliefs, and instead, uncover truth in the noisy ocean of information out there. And before we dive in, if you find this helpful, don't forget to hit subscribe plus the bell so you never miss a new video. Drop a comment with your thoughts. I always read and reply so we can learn together. This is Different Thinking, a channel where I share modern, practical perspectives on thinking, so you can not only listen but apply them in real life. The concept and importance of critical thinking. Have you noticed that most of us live on autopilot? From the moment we wake up, grabbing our phones, checking emails, eating breakfast, heading to work, we get pulled into meetings, news, social media. Throughout the day, we make hundreds of big and small decisions, yet rarely pause to ask, why did I choose this over that? That's why critical thinking has become a survival skill in our time. It's not just for scientists trying to reach Mars, or politicians solving climate change. It's for all of us, you, me, and anyone who wants a life with more clarity, fewer mistakes, and deeper meaning. Imagine you want to start exercising. What would you pick, running, yoga, or weightlifting? If you just go by emotion or casual advice, you might quit after a few weeks. But if you know how to ask, what's my real goal? Health, fitness, endurance, you'll find the right fit and stick with it. What's fascinating is that critical thinking works like a filter for information. In the internet age, information floods everywhere, some true, some false, and much of it half true, half false. Without the ability to filter, we're easily swept away by emotions, ads, or truths that sound convincing but are full of traps. Do you remember the last time you read a shocking news story? The first reflex is often, wow, that's terrible, followed by instantly sharing it. But if you pause just 10 seconds and ask, is this source reliable? Is there solid evidence? You'll find yourself far less manipulated. Critical thinking doesn't just help us make better choices, it also improves the quality of our daily conversations. When we know how to listen, analyze, and respond reasonably, we become more engaging, more trustworthy, and most importantly, less trapped in pointless arguments. And here's something I believe deeply: anyone can learn critical thinking. It's not a talent you're born with, it's a habit you train. Like a muscle, the more you work it, the stronger it gets. The question isn't, do you have critical thinking? But, have you trained it enough? So from the tiniest everyday decisions to the big choices in career or family, critical thinking is the light that guides the way. It's not always easy, but it will bring you closer to truth, and protect you from dangerous illusions. The nature of the brain and its limitations. Have you ever wondered why we sometimes make poor decisions, even when all the facts are right in front of us? The answer lies within our own brain. The brain is an incredible organ. It not only produces thoughts but can also think about how it produces those thoughts. Yet at the same time, it carries system flaws that make us easy to deceive. For example, have you ever been swayed by an ad, bought something, and regretted it later? That's when emotions and biases take over. Our brain craves familiarity, safety, and often chooses the easy path over the hard one. Our primitive ancestors survived thanks to these instincts. Hear a strange sound in the bushes? Running instantly could save their lives. But in today's modern world, that same instinct can backfire. Instead of careful analysis, we rush to conclusions and trust whatever feels right. Scientists call this cognitive bias, the unconscious habits that push the brain to choose the fastest solution, not the most accurate one. We prefer decisions that feel comfortable rather than rational. Think about the last time you met someone new. Within seconds, Your brain scored them trustworthy or not, friendly or distant. But was that judgment accurate? Often, the first impression is completely wrong, shaped by looks, voice, or a single small detail. Even more dangerous, the brain is easily fooled by its own memory. We think of memory as undeniable evidence, but in reality, it's fragile and prone to distortion. Studies have shown that many people clearly remember events that never actually happened. What does this mean? It means that without critical thinking, our brain will keep pushing us into wrong decisions, from buying useless things to making major mistakes in career, finance, or relationships. That's why the first step in overcoming the brain's limitations is to realize that the brain has limitations. It sounds obvious, yet most of us live as if I think it must be right. Admitting that we could be wrong is the key that unlocks growth in thinking. You see, the brain is both a gift and a trap. It allows us to create, to love, to dream, but it also misleads us. Only by learning to face its weaknesses can we truly control our thinking, instead of being controlled by it. The skills you need for critical thinking. When people hear critical thinking, many imagine debating or nitpicking others. But at its core, it's not about criticizing, it's a set of skills that help us see issues more clearly. The first and most important skill is asking questions. A critical thinker doesn't blindly believe. They ask, what's the evidence? Who's saying this? Could there be another perspective? Think back to when you were a child, constantly asking, why this? Why that? That curiosity is the root of critical thinking. Yet as we grow up, many stop asking, afraid of being annoying. But it's that persistent curiosity that brings us closer to truth. The second skill is logical analysis. It's the ability to see the structure in an argument. What's the premise? What's the conclusion? And do they connect tightly? An argument may sound convincing, but if the premise is weak or unrelated, the conclusion collapses. Think about ads. Drink this and you'll stay young forever. Sounds tempting, right? But when you analyze, you'll ask, where's the scientific proof? Any studies? Or just personal claims? Once you ask, you see many promises are pure illusions. The third skill is separating emotions from facts. We often think, if I like it, it must be right. If I dislike it, it must be wrong. But critical thinking requires pausing to ask, are my feelings clouding the truth? For example, when listening to a politician's speech, you may agree simply because you already like them, or reject it because you dislike them. But a critical thinker listens to the reasoning, analyzes the logic, not just their feelings. Another skill is building step-by-step solutions. Critical thinking isn't just spotting what's wrong, it's about fixing it. Faced with a big problem, a critical thinker breaks it down, solves piece by piece, instead of panicking. Say you want to change careers but don't know where to start. Instead of quitting immediately, you analyze, what skills am I missing? What do I need to learn? How long will it take? By breaking it down, the path becomes clearer. Finally, perhaps the most vital skill, the ability to admit you might be wrong. This is the hardest, because our ego always wants to believe, I'm right. Yet the moment you can say, maybe I'm wrong, is the biggest step forward. You see, critical thinking isn't some distant academic subject. It's made of everyday skills: questioning, analyzing, managing emotions, solving problems, and staying humble with your own thoughts. They are mental tools, and the more you use them, the sharper you get. Common mistakes in thinking. Here's an interesting truth. Our brain isn't as smart as we like to think. In fact, it makes mistakes all the time. And the dangerous part is, we rarely notice when we're wrong. One of the most common errors is logical fallacy. For example, if many people believe it, it must be true. But in reality, popularity doesn't equal truth. Go back to the Middle Ages. Most people believed the earth was flat. It didn't make them right. The second mistake is confirmation bias. We naturally look for information that supports what we already believe, and ignore anything that challenges it. Think about the last time you wanted to buy a new car. If you liked a certain brand, you probably Googled reviews praising it, but negative ones, you likely skipped. In the end, you felt sure you chose wisely, when in fact, you filtered the info to fit your desire. The third mistake, treating memory as absolute evidence. In reality, memory is like a painting that gets altered every time you recall it. It's easily distorted by emotions, beliefs, and even stories others tell you. Studies show that many people confidently remember events that never actually happened. This phenomenon is called false memory, which means, even if you're 100% sure of your memory, it may not be accurate. Another mistake is emotional reasoning. We often think, if it feels right, it must be true, but feelings are not evidence. You may feel scared walking past an abandoned house, but that doesn't mean it's haunted. There's also the mistake of oversimplifying problems. Life is complex, but we crave quick, simple answers. That's why conspiracy theories are so appealing. They turn messy events into a neat story with a clear villain. But reality is different. Big events, economic crises, pandemics, climate change, usually have multiple causes. If we force everything into a simple explanation, we miss the real picture. And finally, a mistake almost everyone makes: believing we're always rational. The truth is, humans are driven more by instincts and emotions than logic. Admitting this doesn't make us weak, it helps us self-correct. You see, thinking errors aren't rare, they're part of being human. But once you can spot them, you can avoid these invisible traps. And the moment you realize, I might be wrong, that's when you're already closer to the truth. The brain model and its influence on thinking. To better understand how we think, imagine the brain as a three-story house. This is Paul MacLean's famous model called the triune brain, the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the human brain. The reptilian brain is the ground floor. It handles basic survival, eating, sleeping, reproducing, and the fight or flight response. This is the part that makes us jump at a strange sound or feel our heart race in danger. The mammalian brain, or limbic system, manages emotions, memories, and social bonds. This is why we love, miss people, or feel heartbroken when rejected. On top sits the human brain, or neocortex. This is the hub of reason, logic, and creativity. It lets us think abstractly, ask why, and imagine possibilities that never existed before. Sounds perfect, right? But here's the problem. These three floors don't always work in harmony. Often, the ancient levels override the modern ones. For example, have you ever planned to give a confident presentation, but once you stood up, your heart pounded and your hands shook? That's your reptilian brain screaming, danger. Even though your neocortex knows, it's fine. It's just a talk. This explains why we often react instinctively before we even think. And it's why, in many situations, humans act emotionally rather than rationally. The triune brain also connects closely to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When basic needs like food and safety aren't met, the brain prioritizes survival, not creativity or self-expression. You can see this in daily life. When you're worried about paying bills, it's hard to sit down and write a novel. When you feel threatened, you focus on self-defense, not on inventing a new business idea. Understanding this model makes us more compassionate with ourselves. If you overreact sometimes, it's not because you're weak, it's because your brain, shaped by millions of years of evolution, is doing its job. At the same time, this awareness gives us a chance to change. When we realize the reptilian brain is taking over, we can pause, breathe, and let the neocortex speak up. So training critical thinking isn't just an intellectual skill. It's the art of balancing these three brain levels to make instinct, emotion, and reason work together instead of against each other. Psychological needs and thinking biases. Humans don't live on bread alone. We carry deep psychological needs: to feel in control, to be loved, to be recognized, and to find meaning. But these very needs often distort the way we think. Let's start with the need for control. No one likes feeling powerless. When life feels random, we cling to beliefs that make us feel safe. That's the root of superstition. Believing a lucky stone will bring fortune, or wearing a winning shirt will make your team succeed. The issue isn't the stone or the shirt, it's the illusion of control. In truth, it's just the brain calming us down. Another need is the search for meaning. When tragedy strikes, it's hard to accept the answer, it was random. So we invent stories, even conspiracy theories, to explain it. For example, a disaster or attack gets framed as part of a secret plot, because we can't accept it was simply a sudden tragedy. Then there's the need for recognition. Everyone wants to feel important, respected by the community. But this same need warps our thinking. We blame circumstances instead of owning mistakes. Or cling to opinions just to protect our ego. Have you ever argued just to save face, even when you knew you were wrong? That's the trap of the need for recognition. Another need, to belong. We're social creatures, wired to be part of a group. That's why we often go along with the majority, even if something feels off. Because opposing the group risks isolation. This is where cognitive dissonance comes in, holding two contradictory beliefs at once, yet rationalizing them to avoid discomfort. For instance, you may believe health matters, yet stay up late and eat poorly. To reconcile, you tell yourself, it's fine, I'm still young. These psychological needs aren't inherently bad. They help us survive and connect. But without awareness, they twist into habits that distort thinking. They're like tinted glasses. Wear them too long, and you forget the world has other colors. Only when you take them off, by recognizing needs and biases, can you see reality clearly. That's why critical thinking isn't just about analyzing facts. It's also the art of self-understanding, knowing which needs are driving you, and daring to ask, am I fooling myself right now? The influence of emotions and environment. Have you noticed that many of the decisions we make aren't really driven by reason, but by emotion? When we're happy, we shop impulsively. When angry, we say hurtful things. When anxious, we exaggerate risks and miss opportunities. Emotions are like filters coloring every choice we make. This doesn't mean emotions are bad. In fact, emotions make us human. They give us love, empathy, and compassion. The problem comes when we let emotions fully take the wheel, without reason in the driver's seat. Do you remember a time you argued just because you felt offended, instead of focusing on the real issue? Or a time you turned down an opportunity out of vague fear? Another key idea is emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize and manage your own emotions while understanding others. High emotional intelligence doesn't mean never feeling angry, but being able to pause, breathe, and respond intentionally. But emotions aren't the only factor shaping our thinking. The environment around us has just as strong an impact. For example, consider the famous invisible gorilla experiment, when viewers were told to count basketball passes in a video. Many completely missed a person in a gorilla suit walking across the screen. This shows that when we focus too narrowly, the environment can hide important things in plain sight. In reality, the brain isn't good at multitasking. It simply switches attention back and forth, missing many details along the way. That's why you can read emails while listening to music, but struggle to fully process both. It's also why in conversations, we miss subtle cues, a glance, a forced smile, because our mind is elsewhere. The environment also shapes us through social pressure. If you're surrounded by pessimists, you'll soon see the world as gloomy. On the other hand, being around open-minded people gradually expands your own thinking. So, what's the solution? It's not about eliminating emotions or escaping environments, it's about awareness. When we know emotions are steering us, we can pause and adjust. When we see the environment shaping us, we can choose carefully who and what we let in. Because in the end, critical thinking isn't just about logical calculation. It's about mastering emotions and creating a healthy space where reason can shine. We've just taken a long journey together, from spotting thinking errors, exploring how the brain works, to understanding the impact of psychological needs, emotions, and the environment. All of it reminds us that critical thinking isn't a luxury for scholars. It's a survival skill for every human being. Imagine if every day you paused for just a few seconds to ask, am I being biased? Am I letting emotions take over? Life would look very different. You'd make wiser choices, have fewer conflicts in relationships, and most importantly, you'd see the world with clear, awakened eyes. Today's world is overflowing with information, but not all of it is reliable. That's why critical thinking is your golden filter, protecting you from fake news, fear tactics, and sweet but empty promises. And remember, critical thinking doesn't mean doubting everything. It's about balance, being open enough to listen, yet sharp enough to question. If you found this video helpful, hit subscribe to 2 Kak Biat today. As a thank you, I prepared a free gift for you, an ebook titled When Emotions Control. You can download it in the description or pinned comment below. Inside are condensed insights to help you start changing tonight. Don't miss this chance, because even a small habit can create a completely different future. And finally, don't forget to comment your thoughts. I'll be there replying and engaging with you. Hit sub plus bell so you won't miss future videos. To watch the full playlist, click the link in the description below.